Cool. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Music. And today we've got a very special guest who's given up the time to come and talk to us and answer your questions. This is Tess Kendal. Hello, Tess.
Welcome. Hello. Hi, everybody.
So this is Meet the Music, and it's a chance for our young people and the people that follow our pages to find out more about the music industry, because there's so many different jobs, so many different pathways into the industry, and it's important that we hear about them and those voices are heard and find out a bit more. We start all of our sessions the same with Meet the Music, and we ask our guests how they started, how they knew that they wanted to be involved in music, their love for music, where that started, and their kind of journey. So if you'd like to tell us about that, that would be great.
So my journey wasn't that obvious for me into music. I think it was more circumstantial. I was born in Hexham and grew up in Newcastle. And when I did my A-levels, I was interested in fashion, and I decided to pursue a degree in costume for the performing arts, so theatre-based stuff. I did a bit of some internships in theatre companies in Newcastle whilst working at a bar, and I went on to do my degree down in London. Always knew that I wanted to come to London, and did my degree at London College of Fashion, and in that time I worked in a nightclub and in a pub, and that ended up being much more instrumental for me at that time in my life. I was 19, 20, and that's where I met my mates. And I think, just to go back a little bit, I've always had music around me. My dad was in a band that was called The Commandments, because there was 10 of them, and they used to
That's great.
they used to do a lot of weddings, and it was just fun. And he played a saxophone. I remember there was always a lot of music on at home, but it was never something that I thought was my lifelong ambition to have as my career. But yeah, as I say, I think when I went to university, I enjoyed my course, but I didn't fall totally in love with it. And I think the more I got to know about the world of working in wardrobe departments through internships and being at university, I felt like it wasn't where I wanted to be at that time of my life. And I'm sure quite often you hear this is that when I was working in the pub, it was a natural progression into, I was leaving university, I was working in a pub. The people who were part of the pub and used to drink in the pub, literally, used to be the site managers of Glastonbury, and we're talking 20 years ago now. So Glastonbury was a much smaller thing, and it was before the fences came up, and there was an investment in these big security fences. And the team who used to do the site management of Glastonbury used to come in and drink at the pub, and were managers of the bar or something, I can't quite remember. And they helped me get another friend helped me get a little bit of work at Glastonbury in the summers, working for the dance tent, doing artist liaison stuff. So literally it was just kind of needing to earn a bit of money, it being connected to the pub world, that I was working literally behind the bar, and I was really enjoying, and had mates there. And then there would be word going out, does anyone come and do have a weekend at Glastonbury? And obviously I was like, and just loved that, loved working in a club, and really liked the sort of the camaraderie of working with bar staff, and being immersed in music and seeing all sorts of different bands. And in London, so I moved to London in 1997, and that was kind of the quite a big tipping point in what was happening in London at that time. It was the start of, I mean, this makes me feel and sound really, really old, but it was an important time in music then, and there was a number of clubs that was much less restricted than it is now, and who knows what it'll be like in the future. But it was the bubbling pot of Hoxton, sorry, someone's in the background, Hoxton Square, and the Blue Note and Goldie and drum and bass and Bjork, and it was all super exciting. There was Notting Hill Carnival, and it was a really bubbling time. So my choice was either to pursue my studies and career in costume and working in wardrobe department, which felt, you know, quite often the wardrobe departments are in downstairs in a basement in the dark with no windows.
Right.
And I just felt like I didn't want to do that. And the world of music and clubs and festivals and traveling and touring and all of that was another direction, and I just thought this feels really exciting. So that's how it started.
Wow. So it's almost, as you say, it's kind of, you were in the space doing something different, but then was drawn to something completely different. Really inspiring to hear that. And I think that kind of is great to hear, because I think a lot of people get really sort of caught up in, oh, well, I need to do this at school to go there, and I need to do this here. I need to get this like sort of step-by-step process to get to the job that you want. Whereas I think your experience completely is kind of that sometimes it is just being in the right place at the right time and being around the people that,
and following I think what I realized is trying to understand what makes you feel excited and happy, and not you know, I had an opportunity in front of me, I took that opportunity, and then I can tell you a bit more in a bit, but I hadn't then, it just sort of kept opening doors in that direction. And it wasn't easy, I think, to decide that the direction that I thought I was going in, and you know, the investment that we'd made for me to go to university wasn't the route that I was going on, but I knew that it wasn't the right path for me. And probably I should say it was a different time, you know, I didn't have to pay the huge fees that people pay now. So I think maybe the decisions I was making at that time were based on less of a massive financial investment in the degree that I took.
So that kind of leads on to more of you sort of telling us more about your role that you're in now then. Do you want to tell us about that and what you do? Yeah,
so I'm what's called a senior product manager at an independent label called Ninja Tune. Ninja Tune is one of the biggest independent labels in the UK, and it was set up 30-something years ago by some guys called Cold Cut, who are like the originators of electronic music, and not one of them. And they were very, very, very experimental. And 30 years ago, not a lot of people were making this music, but what they were doing is making music and also making visuals and really experimenting with the technology of the time. And their whole ethos with Ninja Tune was that it was a space to do something that the big major labels weren't doing. They were an artist and they were signed to a major label, and they got quite big quite quickly, but really didn't like the experience of being an artist on a major label or in a pop trajectory. So they set up a label, and it's always been a space where artists are encouraged to be really experimental and creative, and are respected, and the deals that we have with our artists are always on a 50-50. It's getting a bit technical, but it's important. In the nature of the label is very transparent with the deals and the communication that we have with the artists. So we always agree everything that we're doing together, and it's much more of a collaborative approach than sometimes major labels have with their artists. And my job is to work with artists and their management teams to deliver their album campaigns. So that's everything from the technical side of they send in their music, the audio, and we make it, so we get it mastered and do the technical production of it, so making the CD and making the vinyl and making sure that it's on Spotify and Apple, etc. To looking at the whole visual direction of the album. So we do things like deciding on photographers to do photo shoots for press pictures or album covers. We think about the album covers. Sometimes we work with designers. We always work with designers. Sometimes it's more artistic. Sometimes it's more photographic based. We commission videos. We do all the kind of the creative output. And that, again, is a conversation with an artist saying, okay, how do you want your album to look? This is how it sounds. This is the audience that it's directed to. And this is how we want to grow to a bigger audience, and come up with all the strategy and thinking about behind the record. And then we act. So my role is to act as the point of contact between an artist and the rest of the team. And maybe it's helpful to talk through a little bit about what a record label setup looks like, and the various people involved in it. So there's our team. In industry, there's 4 product managers, so we each get assigned an artist, and then we work with them throughout their time with the label. And then there's a digital team who do all the digital delivery of music into Spotify, etc. There's a social media team who work with myself and the artist to think about how to develop their social media platforms, looking at new technology, how to increase profiles, how to think about communication and brand profile using social media. We do very detailed communications plans relating to the release process. So I would go away and think about the timings for releases, which singles, which videos, etc. And I feed that into the social media team, and then they help me come up with content that's posted on an artist's socials. There is a team in LA who do everything that I do in the UK, but they do it for all of the US market. So again, the digital side of stuff. We have a press team who help me write press releases for the artists and biographies to sum up the release and sum up the artist's career and their direction and their references and stuff. And then they communicate the release information and the music out to journalists. We have an international team who do that internationally. We have radio pluggers. So again, I would say, okay, these are the 3 singles. This is when the album's coming out. They help me decide what singles are going to work well on. Our music's mainly on 6 Music and Radio 1. So, and then they go in and do what's called plugging, which is talking to people like Annie Mac or Lauren Avern or whoever in their teams and saying, we've got a new project, this is music, blah, blah. We have publishing department, which is you taking music and that, and then pitching it for things like adverts or films or anything additional that you can do with music. So wherever it can be appearing on TV or whatever, they do that. So and there's an A&R team, probably that's the last main department. A&R are the ones who sign an artist, and they do a lot of research into who's making music and they have their eyes on bands and artists, and they sign, so they do a deal, they do the negotiations with an artist and their management, and then after they've done the deal, it comes onto my desk, and together with the NR team, we discuss the overall direction of what that band or what that artist wants to take and go in, and decide again, the singles and the options that we do on each of the tracks.
It's so nice to hear. I've learned something there, hearing all that from you. It's brilliant. How collaborative it all is.
It's a huge team.
Yeah.
There's also one last team that are very important, and we always forget, is the retail team.
Right.
So it's literally the people who talk to. There's a wider network of distributors, and it's the people who talk to the independent record shops or the bigger distributors or HMV, and sell our records into those stores.
Right.
So yeah.
I'm trying to think if anyone's actually asked about the inner workings of your job, actually, now that I have a look. Someone's asked you what are the best bits about your job. So within all of that you've just told us, is there certain bits that you kind of really enjoy, like a highlight for you within your job role?
The best bit for me is when I work with an artist and their team that really resonates for me. That I personally love their music. I'm excited by it, and they're lovely people to work with, and it's a very collaborative approach of, we're in this together and we've got the same objective and goal to be able to get this music out to the wide world and make sure that artist can grow and grow and grow and go to where they want to go. And that's what I love. We work with a very broad range of music and a very broad range of artists, and so some stuff's not always to my personal taste, but that's not a negative necessarily, because you always learn to hear great things in all sorts of music. So
someone's asked here about, so you've already answered like pretty much quite a few of them. No, it's good. Someone's asked about career highlights. Have you got any of those to share?
So after working in a pub and at Glastonbury, there was a year so Glastonbury has there's been a load of highlights. I'll give you a couple. Glastonbury has what's called a fallow year, so they don't operate some years, and the team who work at Glastonbury go on to do different things in different places. And that year they went on to do a project for Ministry of Sound. So I ended up being employed by Ministry of Sound to do some work in their events department, and stayed on, and ended up doing a lot of touring for them. So I used to travel all over the world doing Ministry of Sound events. And after that, I went to another label called Defected and set up their events department, and used to do all of their events again all over the world, and travelled, which was incredible. And then after that, I decided I needed to change things up a little bit, and managed to get a job in Berlin, and that was a real amazing experience and a lucky experience. And I'd never been there before, and I don't know if I'd even been to Germany before. I certainly couldn't speak German. And then, but they were looking for someone who had a bit of an event experience and setting up a brand. So that's how I got a job there, and that was really exciting, just to kind of pack my bags and go.
And go and do it. Someone actually asked you what's it like to be on tour, because I know that in your little blurb that you sent, it says about being on tour. What's that like?
Being on tour, it's amazing. It's what's it like? It's like being in a bubble with some characters,
yeah,
lovely characters, and it's quite intense work. There's not a lot of personal time. There's not a lot of downtime, and you have to really remember that you're working. It's quite hard to. Well, it's quite easy to forget that because loads of it's really good fun.
yeah.
And you're at a festival, or you ended up in Brazil in a nightclub or something, and it's really, really good fun. And generally, you're with people who are great people as well. And so you kind of have to have one eye on or two eyes on the ball, really, and then remember, okay, now it's time to stop and we finish work for the day. But you have to make sure you have to get your voice heard, and make sure that you're working with an artist and make sure that they're getting what they need. You know, if it's like making sure that they have the right equipment, or making sure that they have the correct drinks in the backstage, or that they're getting their press and radio interviews done. So it's trying to remember that it's work, and you don't get a lot of sleep, and you can be away for 48 hours, and then you're back in your flat, and you're like, your flatmate's like, yeah, where have you been? And just like, I've been in Brazil. Yeah.
Wow. So, because I think sometimes when you follow like your favorite artists on Instagram or on Facebook, they show like really kind of the highlights of it in the show, like when people do those tour vlogs. You maybe sometimes don't always see that there's a lot of hard work that goes into stuff all everywhere within a tour, and
a huge amount of hard work, and artists, they have a huge amount of pressure on their shoulders to really deliver, and I think it's obviously really exciting, but totally daunting to stand up on a stage and perform in front of thousands of people and make sure that your equipment's working and it's you're feeling good, and to be able to do all of that on the road environment where you're not at home and you're not getting a good night's sleep, and you're you're reliant on so many other people making it work well for you.
I imagine it's probably quite draining for the artists to kind of keep
hugely,
the same thing, night after night, and knowing all those fans are there that have spent the money to come and watch you, and you feel like you can, perform for them. Yeah, there must be a lot of And then there's some nights that you do it, and everybody knows this, and some nights you do it and no one turns up, and that's what you don't necessarily see. But you don't, it's not always packed out, sell out gigs, and that can be really, really draining. But sometimes they're the best nights, where you have like 50 people in a room going totally mental, and it's their best night ever, and it doesn't matter. Brilliant. What have I got here? Someone has actually asked, this is quite an interesting question that I wonder whether you have any comments on. Someone's asked, what has been your experience of being a woman in the music industry? Someone's asked that question.
Good question. So I have had a really good experience being in the music industry. I've been very lucky, and I've worked really hard, and I've had a lot of people who have been very supportive of me, and I think that's a key, finding good relationships along the way and people helping you up. I think when I started to really think about it was when I had I've got two kids, two sons, and my eldest is now nearly 5. And when I went back to work after having him, I realised what a big change that was.
Right.
And my own personal experience was having had a year out that was a massive change for me. And then going back to a company that had grown hugely in the time that I was away, and also the industry changed hugely in the year that I was off. So there was the upsurge in streaming and kind of the massive shift into people using platforms like Spotify and Apple really changed the nature of the work that I do, and the focus of it and how you deliver stuff. And having had a year out of the music industry, and coming back into it and coming back into a team that had changed, I found it very difficult to find my place again. And I think that took quite a long time to regain my confidence. And as I've carried on being a mum in the industry, not just being a woman, but also being a mum, it definitely has made me less available to, even though I feel less available, I don't feel as such. So like I'm you know, I've worked throughout COVID with 2 little kids at home and blah, blah, blah. But I think people see me as less available. And I think maybe there was some opportunities that I didn't get to take because I was less available.
Right.
That may change as the kids get older and, you know, whatever. But it's a definite fact that if you're a woman, you take time out of your career and you become a slightly different person, for better and for worse.
Yeah. And you mentioned the whole coronavirus situation, which is it's very much real, very much happening. How's it been with your role during this time? Are you still doing things, or?
So it was. I mean, it's been you know, just crazy for everybody, and I think everybody's had their own things to deal with within it. Just with regards to our work, we're very fortunate at Ninja that we have music that streams. You know, some music streams really well. So it was important for us to keep releasing records. We didn't want to furlough too many staff. We've got a very full release schedule, so we tend to, you know, start a year with it already planned out.
Right.
Certainly for the first 6 months, if not the full year, we know what's coming. And so when COVID really hit, we'd already got a full year's worth of releases in. Some of those releases we pushed back, and the releases that we tended to push back were the ones where the artists do a huge amount of touring. So I think for us as a label, you know, we've been able to carry on working, carry on releasing. In some instances, it's been easier to get music out because people are at home, people are listening more. But overall, it's been a terrible time to release music because not just because of touring, but because things like the radio stations have been running on a small staff, and a lot of it's pre-recorded, so you can't get your music on the radio as easily.
Right.
A lot of magazines haven't, you know, again, have got a smaller staff, or they're not printing over the summer, so that's been restricted. A lot of the touch points where you would promote your music have been held back because people aren't working as well as they normally do. And it's not just live. Unfortunately, the artists have been hit the worst because that's the live income is huge for them. As a label, we don't have a share of their live income, so we just do all the recorded side of their work. So we've been trying to support our artists through that. There's various initiatives that are trying to support artists and crew of the live industry to keep going. But on the whole, we've kept working, we've kept releasing. We didn't want to postpone too many projects because it would just end up at a backlog at the end of the year, and a lot of other labels and a lot of other artists postponing their stuff, and then it just becomes too many people at the end of the year or into next year. So we kept going.
And I personally watched quite a few sort of live streams that people have been doing online, which is really nice. And I think that's nice that some of these artists have started doing that more regularly as well. I know I follow a couple of bands. I've been trying to do them more often for the fans and stuff, and I think that's kind of nice in terms of them gaining that bigger connection, stronger connection with the fans, and kind of being able to talk to them like we sort of are now.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
There's a lot of conversation happening in the background. We're having a lot of conversations about live streaming and about ticketed, so paying to watch performances, and that's really important, because I think initially people felt that we just have to perform and be visible online, and now artists and venues and crew, to put on a live stream, there's cost involved, and it means that you can also employ crew, and so if you're paying a ticket to watch a live stream, then you're also paying towards the venue that it's been held in. You're paying towards the crew that can't otherwise get any income, and an artist who are doing a performance. So there's going to be more and more and more of that. And I think the interesting thing is that there's the development of technology to be able to produce these live streams is going to get better and better and better. So there's loads of stuff that will happen with COVID that will allow an artist to reach a much more global, universal audience in a different way, not the same way, but in a different way.
Yeah. Right. Well, it looks like we're reaching the end of our questions actually on here. We've got one here. Someone's asked about, advice for a young person that's just started writing their own music and they want to release something. Have you got any kind of top tips for releasing something online with social media and stuff and the posts?
Okay. Bandcamp is a great place.
Right.
So Bandcamp is, if you can set yourself up on Bandcamp as an artist, basically, if you sell your music, it goes directly to you. You don't need a label necessarily. I don't know a huge amount about it, but it's worth having a look into Bandcamp. But it's a big marketplace. It's a big record store, but it's those stores are managed by artists themselves, and they receive the income. And it's a big community, and so you can build your profile on there, and it's sort of, you can see it as an extension of social media.
Yeah.
So I'd say that's a really good starting point for anybody, just to build their profile. I think if you're starting out in music, one of the things that labels and A&Rs and management are looking for is an artist that can show how much they're able to grow themselves and how much ambition that they have and direction.
Yeah.
And so if you think about your Instagram account or your Facebook or your Bandcamp or whatever, it's all places that people can come and have a look and see what you look like, what you sound like, how you communicate, what your direction is. It's a really amazing thing to be able to present yourself in that way without it costing anything and without being reliant on anybody else.
Yeah. I think especially during this time, getting a bit more creative with the things that you're putting out there and the content that you're doing is kind of welcomed, isn't it? I think for fans that follow your music, it's nice for them to kind of see what you're up to, things that you're into. And I've seen a lot of people doing lots of TikToking. That seems to be a big we even artists who are not really, who don't really feel like it's their thing or are definitely not going to do some wacky dance, we do encourage everybody to have a profile on TikTok, partly because it means that your music's there. So if someone's performing a dance to your music, then it's connected back to you and it all grows. So it's worth making sure that you have a profile on all the different platforms, even if you're not necessarily using that one. You can sync the same content across it all. Right, we've reached the end.
Okay.
This has been such a lovely conversation with you, and I know that the people watching are going to get a lot out of it and go away feeling more inspired in a time where inspiration feels like a bit far away sometimes.
I know, but the world doesn't stop turning, does it? And everybody needs music, and so I think just keep going. If you've got the passion for it, just do it, and you'll find a way.
Yeah. We do a thing at Soundwave where we talk about music that we're really into every week. It's called Song of the Week, and we've been trying to keep them going online, and all of our young people come on and tell us what they've been listening to.
Great.
Have you got any artists that you think people should check out? And this could be people on your label, or it could be people that aren't. Anyone that you'd recommend someone go and listen to?
So I'm working with an artist. No, it's okay. I always get a bit like, there's an artist I'm working with that I think is really interesting, and she's definitely not everybody's cup of tea, and I'm just about to start a new album campaign for her, so watch out for it. She's called Marie Davidson. Yeah, and she's a Canadian artist, but she's someone who I think is a true artist. So she never stands still. She always pushes herself and her music and her art forward. And she had an album out a couple of years ago, and there was a remix of that got played everywhere on Radio 1 and got nominated for a Grammy and stuff like that. But it's kind of electronic club music, but in a really interesting way. It's definitely worth checking out. And she's got a new album coming this year, and I think she's quite exciting.
Wow. Well, there you go, everybody listening. That's who you need to go and listen to. Do it. Get on it. Right. Well, I can only say thank you for your time. I know this is a strange, weird, wonderful time, but thank you for taking time out of your day to come and talk to us. And
that's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much.
See you soon.